This is an historic neighborhood, as you well know. This is ground zero for the story of jazz.
Yeah.
And gentrification happens everywhere. Brooklyn in New York and London's got its gentrification, but what's happened down here has been pretty brutal, in my opinion. But this culture that Benny's so marvelously maintaining is still very, very strong.
Food, music, laughter, and an energy that would seep down into your pores and flow out of your soul. That's how musician John Richardson describes the Treme neighborhood, and it's what led him to the community. But today, the sound of children playing in the streets has been replaced by the sound of suitcases rolling as visitors make their way to their next Airbnb.
Yeah, so we wanted to know why the neighborhood is transformed into one that barely has any native residents. Where did they go? And did they take the culture birthed in Treme with them?
Here's part 2 of my special report, Death of a Neighborhood, Survival of a Culture.
It was known as a place publique, a public place, before it was known as Congo Square. It was known by the Spaniards from the 1760s when they took over Louisiana as Plaza de los Negros, a black place. But of course, become known later as Congo Square, where the indigenous were allowed to congregate.
Square surroundings are ever evolving. As many say, attempts to modernize New Orleans came at the expense of Treme.
We are rolling right now.
Dr. Eric Johnson is the president of Urban Regeneration Advisors. When talking about the forces that took down Treme, he says they were swift and unforgiving.
Treme has always been, since the end of the 19th century, pretty much a area that started out facing development pressures.
When you look at a neighborhood and what took it down, it's never one thing, it's a gumboard thing. But I can tell you unequivocally, nothing traumatized the Treme more than the building of the I-10.
North Claiborne was home to a bustling business district. It was estimated more than 120 businesses ran along the corridor and hundreds of oak trees. But to build the highway, the state took over several properties along Claiborne between Tulane and St. Bernard Avenue. Some refer to it as the monster. The building of the I-10 overpass over North Claiborne sent the business district into economic decline. Today, only a few dozen businesses still stand. Charbonnet Funeral Home is one of them, sitting along Claiborne Avenue since 1883.
It ran all the family-owned black businesses away. What Magazine Street is now, Claiborne Avenue used to be like that. I mean, with all kind of African-American owned businesses, insurance companies, grocery stores, all that left when the interstate came along.
The elevated highway plan proposed in the 40s was to include Claiborne Avenue and a highway that would have gone from Elysian Fields along the riverfront and front of Jackson Square to Canal Street. It would then descend into a tunnel. It would have been called the Vieux Carré Riverfront Expressway, but French Quarter preservationists fought that plan for decades. In 1969, they won their battle. But the opposition of those living in Treme wasn't enough to stop the plans from moving forward there. In 1966, crews began to destroy the neutral ground, replacing oak trees with tall cement pillars.
It was the thing that projected me to go into politics and got elected to the legislature because we had no voice. We had nobody in government who was standing up for our community. This is a very old, antique horse-drawn carriage.
Former Representative Louis Charbonnet III served in the State House from 1972 to 1984.
And we used to have kids playing, or we had the neutral ground on Claiborne Avenue, which was the largest and prettiest neutral ground in the city.
where we used to play and had oak trees and azaleas, and it was just a wonderful place to grow up in.
Today, the only sign of oak trees are those painted on the pillars beneath the highway.
Claiborne Avenue.
Dr. Raynard Sanders, another preservationist, started the Claiborne Avenue History Project as a way to remember what this street was to Treme.
And every community has a commercial hub. Now in New Orleans, we had several of them that serviced the black community, but none like Claiborne Avenue. You had black businesses mostly. You had some white businesses too. Everything you could find right here on Claiborne Street.
And attempts to right the wrongs of the interstate, there have been federally funded studies to examine how to bring North Claiborne Avenue back to its original glory. Dr. Sanders participated in one study with the Claiborne Avenue design team meant to bring back business.
What was the result of the study? What did they do with it?
I put it on the shelf, didn't hear any more about it. And in essence, you know, they were just giving money to the community to quiet us down because we were complaining.
Even if the elevated highway was taken down, most feel the damage is irreparable.
I don't think it can ever come back unless there's a concerted effort to open up opportunities for those businesses to return, all right? Physically, that is not something that has happened.
When did you first notice the big change happening in Treme that affected residents here?
Well, the first change was when Armstrong Park came along, when they ran all those people away. And,
where Congo Square and everything is?
Congo Square is where the auditorium is, where the Treme Community Center is.
The expressway wasn't the first assault on Treme. The state and federal government implemented urban renewal plans that would displace hundreds of African-American families from their homes.
Why do you feel as though Treme was considered dispensable?
You look at the notion of, well, there are African-Americans there, people of color that's free. You know, some people would not necessarily place a higher value on individuals living in those neighborhoods.
Gentrification of the Treme neighborhood would begin with the building of the municipal auditorium, tearing down the historic Treme market. That was in the 30s. Each decade after, urban renewal projects targeted Treme and surrounding communities.
Do you believe that the city of New Orleans or the federal government played a role in its demise?
New Orleans was no different than any other city in terms of urban renewal, this sort of concept of removal of blight for issues and causes that may not necessarily have been the case. So the long answer to that question is, I would say yes.
Initially thought of in the 20s, plans to build a cultural complex in the space that now houses Armstrong Park resurfaced in the 60s. Dozens of city blocks in Treme were leveled.
It was supposed to be the Opera Center. Yeah. And that didn't work. Then they talked about making it an amusement type park like Tivoli Gardens in Europe. And that didn't work, and now it's just an open space, which is nice, but it used to be homes.
Another point of contest was the fencing of the park.
And I think that community also felt very betrayed because there was never going to be a fence. It was really kind of sold to Treme like this would be a beautiful green space that will be integrated into the neighborhood, and that didn't happen. And so it almost, you can see it when you drive down the street, right? It almost feels like there's a wall between Armstrong Park and Treme.
Treme residents were fed up.
Interstate comes along on Claiborne Street, wipes out our businesses. The park comes along, takes away all our businesses, and what happens to us? We get unemployment.
The Treme Community Improvement Association formed in 1969, fighting back against further destruction or displacement in the historic neighborhood under the guise of urban renewal. But it was too late. Historians estimate more than 400 families were now scattered throughout the city.
The place was torn up. Folk were displaced overnight. Move in with the bulldozers.
Really?
That would not happen to any other neighborhood where we don't live.
It's still traumatic for the community and for people who had family here. So when that happened, you lost some of all the beautiful architectural buildings and bars and houses.
Construction projects and urban renewal left the community scrambling to hold on to the fabric that made it a community. And then the perfect storm opened the floodgates to a new wave of issues, leaving Treme clinging on to what's left of its culture.
And we continue our series tomorrow on Eyewitness News at 10 as we explore how Hurricane Katrina opened up the gates for investors with a new business concept that we all know as Airbnb. So just how many are in Treme, and how did it impact the neighborhood so much that it led to even more displacement? Be sure to join us.